meeting, which is hosted by Harold Chatter here in Midtown Manhattan. It's a great opportunity for public access producers to get together and to share ideas and to learn how to make community TV even more dynamic than it is today. Freedom of speech is essential for a democracy. And today we have the special privilege of listening to filmmaker Chris Zelov.
That's right. Chris is over here. Chris is we're going to be seeing a lot of Chris.
And we're eager to hear about your experiences making films.
And we've got about 20 people here. And would you want to tell them that it is being streamed?
And we're streaming now also on Ustream for all the people on Harold Chatter's list.
Okay, so then welcome everyone. Again, I add mine to hers, and it's really good to see everybody. More people will probably be coming. But why don't we turn it off to Chris Zelov, filmmaker extraordinaire, and he can talk some about himself and about his past projects and his new project upcoming. Chris, take it away, please.
Well, thank you for that fine introduction. Pleasure to be here at the studio in Midtown Manhattan. I came all the way from Bucks County, 70 miles away. My car broke down yesterday, so it was quite a challenge to find another form of transportation, but I was able to do it.
Yay!
Good. So I'm going to talk about the independent filmmaker's perspective and what's unique about it, and perhaps what you can all learn from it, because I know you already know everything being New Yorkers and being in the media. So I'm going to try and share how I approach making films, and perhaps can illuminate some new angles on bringing ideas to the people, new ideas. I like the Spanish phrasing, volver a no saber, return to not knowing. This was a maxim of a group that's featured in City21, which is my new film.
Hold it up to the camera here, please. Oh, that's the DVD that's out
only
now.
out now for special screenings, but hopefully eventually everywhere.
Can you repeat the title?
It's called City21 Multiple Perspectives on Urban Futures. And we look at 8 different case studies of where new perspectives and new initiatives are taking place that I think, can reshape the ethos of the 21st century city. And I say ethos in the sense of the Greek word, the nature and orientation of life, of doing something. Ethos, pathos, logos is how I always like to think about structuring a presentation. So ethos is a word that I don't think we really have in English to get into it, but it's a philosophical word getting into the stance of the people, what they think is important, and how they go about doing things. And clearly we're in a time of change where the games we've been playing and the civilization games we've been playing need to change a little bit and evolve towards something more interesting than just heroic materialism, which is the prime meme or the prime game that America's playing. That was pointed out by Sir Kenneth Clark back with his great series Civilization, which some of you may know about, which in documentary filmmaking, educational filmmaking, was a landmark. I think it was the late 60s. I think he got knighted for it, a 10-part series on civilization. So I'm going to talk about 3 themes, and then I'm going to show 4 different clips. And I'm going to keep it pretty simple. The 3 themes are based on Greek words, I think. It all goes back to the Greeks. Heuristic, hermeneutic, and cosmogenesis. So these are the 3 themes that drive the approach to filmmaking that the Kenosis Project takes, what I call edumentary filmmaking. So,
that's good.
The first one, heuristic, which I think everybody knows the word. I like to say we engage in heuristic filmmaking. Heuristic is a tool for discovery. And the camera may be the greatest tool for discovery that was invented in the past 100 years. Actually, I think it goes back to the Lumiere brothers, although we like to say it was Edison. I think it was the Lumiere brothers who figured out how to make the sprocket turn, so we actually had motion picture. and that's what brought it to life. I think that was a turn of the century that happened. Somebody may know more accurate than me. Feel free to bring it up as we keep this interactive. But anyway, tool for discovery. And this idea of discovery also is a concept that had to be invented. And I think Henry the Navigator, in my research, was the man who really discovered the idea of continuous discovery, that life can be about continuous discovery. And in his case, he was sending out discovery ships to find out what was going on around the world. And he's the first one to go around the what was that called, Cape Horn in Africa there. And
he and the people they sent. Yeah. He and the people he sent. I don't know.
Right. Well, he was the prince that financed
the Medici. Yeah.
We could call this a research and development orientation, but I like it was discovery in the best sense of the word, discovering how the world works and trying to bring back knowledge and use it for the development of a more informed citizenry. Whether he did that fully is debatable, but this was talked about in Daniel Bornstein's book, The Discoverers, which is a classic book from the former head of the Library of Congress. Important treatise, kind of epic scale, looking at the history of discovery. He also did a book on creativity, which was also epic. So, heuristic is the approach that we take to filmmaking, and it's non-scripted, which I'm sure everybody in community television knows about. Non-scripted, it's not something that is programmed. We go out with a set of questions, with a framework, and a strategic thrust, and we try and find out what's actually happening out there. It's not like we're imposing it. And for City21, the two key questions were, what are some of the key initiatives and perspectives shaping the 21st century city? That was question number one. Number two is, what could we learn from the emerging eco-village movement that's happening around the world?
Chris?
Yes.
Could you mention Ecological Design?
Yes, well, Ecological Design was our first big film, and that also
that was a major film.
Heuristic.
You did that?
Yes.
We had that in Cyprus. We were building an eco-village there.
Okay.
That's been out for years.
Yes, this is 95 vintage.
Wow, pleased to meet you.
And that was, of course, Buckminster Fuller as our tour guide, who Harold has great esteem for. We were going to call it Into the Fuller Universe, but the family felt they owned the name Fuller, and that actually was good because we got into the deeper issues of what has happened to some of his ideas, where they mutated, and where they're going now, and this idea of comprehensive anticipatory design, and finding an integration between nature, technology, and humanity. That was part of the key question, which I'm going to show the beginning of this film because it does frame it according, how can we find a way of designing, how can we find a way of life that integrates nature, technology, and humanity. They were the two questions that drove that research. So that's my basis in terms of heuristic filmmaking, is that you start with a few questions and you see where the questions take you, and that's the process. And so the viewer now can be participatory in the learning process. And the values are based on learning, not on ratings, and not on the latest in VR techniques. That's probably not new to anybody in community cable, but and of course looking for the narrative structure that emerges, the patterns that emerge in terms of the themes, and how to put together a story as part of heuristic filmmaking. But it starts with basic questions.
Do we have the camera on him?
No, it's facing this way.
I know, I should be having it on. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So that's the first theme, heuristic filmmaking. Great word. Some of it I got from Michael Ray, who wrote a book called Creativity in Business. He talked about developing heuristics as you go through the day. So this is something, and he called heuristics are like axioms. So one of it could be make everything easy, effortless, and enjoyable. So that could be a heuristic that you put in your mind as you go through the day and see what happens when you operate that way. and see if you have that experience.
As you go through the different steps.
Whatever day, yeah, of course, you're a day. So,
It's a mode of interpretation.
yes, it's a way of seeing, it's a way of discovering, yes. But getting into interpretation is the second theme that I want to talk about, which is hermeneutics, the second Greek word of this talk. Hermeneutics is the science of interpretation. And there's also something called spiritual hermeneutics, which I've been reading about. Henry Corbin is the great writer who talks about Islamic philosophy in terms of spiritual hermeneutics, and that's trying to find the meaning in history, the meaning in what has happened since the beginning of time, the underlying archetypes, the truth behind appearance. Yes, of course, Platonic and the Greeks were good at that. But hermeneutics is a science of interpretation, and the idea is we all live in a hermeneutic circle, that we don't really know reality as much as we think we do. We live in a circle of interpretation, which is based on our history, our personal history, the books we've read, the people we know, and our biases. We're all biased more than we realize, whether it's politically, economically, in terms of art. We all have things that turn us on, which is fine. That's great.
We're living in the media bubble.
We're living in a media bubble. Well, yeah, but we can be editors of that media more than ever before.
Yeah.
So the tools have been democratized. So that's something to celebrate. And you don't have to let the media be your authority on what's real.
You us intellectuals, but in reality, mainstream America just wants mainstream censored news.
Mainstream America is going down the tubes.
I'm not going to argue with you there, but it's always been...
Going, it is.
It's always what the Greeks, what they call it, the hoi polloi, the masses. Well, what are you going to do about that? That's a philosophical question. My approach is to find tools and to present inspiring ideas. And those who pick up on it, fine. And those who don't and want to go to the baseball game and believe everything that's told to them, well, there's only so much you can do other than expose them. But the great democratic experiment of America is that this information is available to more and more people. And we do have a middle class here that is larger than most countries.
Now,
And,
could I ask a question?
Yes!
Yes.
Maggie.
Now, if you would turn the television off, the cable off, and all the ladies in the town and villages went back to the well, do you think they would have any more truth in what they talked about as they exchanged and gossip than what's going off over the networks, the television, the internet, or even to somebody's cocktail party?
Can I answer that question?
Oh, well. You answered, I can't.
I have the stage.
I got a good answer.
He has the stage.
I think the range of possibilities are increased. Our ability to know about the world has been increased. We know more than ever before. At least we have access to information than ever before. So perhaps the conversations would be enriched.
Do you think that the classic Greek tragedies and comedies and their points of view in terms of themes have increased because of technological knowledge? Or are we still working in the same dilemmas of the old Greek tragedies?
Right. Yes, certainly the Greeks framed the questions 2,000 plus years ago that are still relevant. And in my research, the three great questions are still with us, if we can say it's three great questions. But this is getting into where I was going next, so thank you. In terms of hermeneutics, science of interpretation, which gets into the other big Greek word, epistemology. Right? How do we know what we know? And
It's because we pissed on the mology.
Oh, stop. Corny.
you got that
Corny.
We're taught it in school. Right?
Huh?
We're taught it in school.
Well, we have experience. We have access. We travel. We talk to people. It expands. But the three great questions in the Greek philosophy, as I understand it, is number one, what counts for knowledge? So that's epistemology. That is still a question that we all have since Plato framed it many years ago. The other one, which is still with us all, which is, what is the good life? That's a question that I think we ask every day, hopefully, or
So
we're
why was
engaged in.
Plato's teacher given the hemlock?
Well, that's another story, Maggie. I don't want to go there.
Yeah. Okay.
There's some tragedy in life.
Yeah.
And then the third question, which we think we've decided, but really it's still something to talk about, which is who shall rule? What's the nature of power? And we have democracy, or at least we on paper we have democracy. Who shall rule and what's the nature of power is something that exists in any organization and at any time. So these questions that are eternal, we could say timeless, are still with us. And as an independent filmmaker and people in the media, shedding light on those questions for people, I think, is part of the mission, the higher mission of spiritual hermeneutics. Yes.
Excuse me, did I miss heuristics? Did you define that?
Heuristics.
You said you all know what it is, but what's your take on it?
Heuristics, in my take on it, is tools for discovery. So heuristic filmmaking is film as a tool for discovery. There may be a deeper definition, but that's how I look at it. And here's the greatest tool, one of the greatest tools humans have invented that expands our ability to discover and learn and know more about the world. Because the other thing in film is that we have this idea, or this, I think part of the reason film is popular is because of what one writer called epistophilia, the love of knowing.
The love of knowing?
Mm-hmm.
Epistophilia,
Uh-huh.
yes. And there's another word, scopophilia, which is the love of seeing. Voila, we love to see the world because we are visual creatures. So that's one reason that I would argue film is one of the most powerful mediums invented.
And I ask you one question, Chris.
Yes, maybe.
Film is very young,
Right, 100 years about.
a little bit more than that.
Okay, well, approximately.
So, the power of moving a thought across the visual pattern, which was theater, or pantheon, or mythological, or what you call the caveman's changing stories around the old fireplace,
Right.
or the old so-and-sos at the well, and such and such. They had great power. And film is so recent. And there's been more film destroyed that's been done
Mm-hmm.
just because of its technology, and there has been kept.
Yeah.
But the
That's a big
power
one.
of film is incredible.
Okay.
It could show a criminal act in the moment. It could show a passionate act in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
It could preserve a historic piece. It could interpret in a novel type text a history that was only bound by historians that the people could then understand. But
Yes.
ultimately, it is able to be controlled, it is able to be destroyed, it is able to be challenged into a way where you have a propagandic type of presentation, or you have a romantic type of presentation. You have some of the most greatest powerful images in film. And
Yeah.
also, as well as that, you have the most powerful ability to show it to others, or not show it to others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He's.
Well, so I would frame it that through the world that I'm trying to investigate is educational, edumentary. So I'm trying to
But also,
transfer ideas. Now,
but
there's
also
narrative
as-
fiction that is about something else, that is about escapism, that may be about sex and violence. That's another school of thought.
No.
So what's
Shut up.
Yeah.
the point is perhaps
They want me to
the
shut up?
Well, he wants to show the film.
filmmaker does have control over what you see to some extent. So it has to do with the intent of the filmmaker, whether it's to educate, to entertain, or to just have you zone out. So yes, that is true. And it's true about anything in life. Your intent is very important. But you're in cable TV world, I think your intent is obviously more than just getting high returns on your production. Right? There's a larger dimension to it. And in fact, since the beginning of film, there's always been two schools dominating it, the documentary approach or the narrative fiction approach. I would say the narrative fiction approach is the one that has won most of the acclaim and wins most of the money. It's based on the star system. And yeah, so these are, there are different approaches that one takes. And obviously we live in a pluralistic society, so the more options we have seems to be better. That's what we decided. And I think that's probably good. But you have to be an editor. You have to be educated to know what information that you need.
You're going to show us 4 clips?
Yes, I'm right there.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to slip in a quick thought about all of this, but because you said an interesting thing there. You said intent. You said the filmmaker has control and the filmmaker has intent.
Yes.
I think, we're being sold a bill of goods every day because we believe we're being entertained,
Right.
when actually we're being programmed or dumbed down or stupefied or channeled into a particular point of view which benefits a cabal of producers and industries who organize to produce X types of shows that, keep you engrossed for months and years in total bullshit.
Total.
And, I'm
Total
in the
bullshit.
industry,
Right.
and it's a bullshit industry. So is the music industry.
Yes, but, okay, that goes on. There is that matrix, but
Stupefaction.
also now you can turn the camera on them. We now have the tools to make our own media like never before.
Like
so that
this.
world may
Well, will it
exist.
hit mainstream?
Before we lose
National
everybody's
Geographic,
brain.
C-SPAN, public access TV, we love it, but the majority of people don't tune in.
I think they
So
do.
is that going to stop you from doing what you do?
I think they do. You can't believe at the expo how many people knew me. The people that came out from Colorado.
With the showbiz expo?
Right.
No, the health expert.
I don't think they really are telling how many people are watching public access. I
Okay.
think it's a lot.
No,
I
it's-
also think the documentary style
Well, that's
is
where-
emerging. I think that's why YouTube is successful.
Yeah,
Because a teenager in her bedroom is making a documentary.
right.
It might be 5 minutes and just her thoughts about her boyfriend, but it's a documentary. So I think the fact that it hasn't been emphasized enough or funded enough doesn't mean that that's not what people want.
Right,
And now
Well,
they're running with their mouse clicks.
right. I think there's reason to be positive, there's reason to be negative.
Yeah.
It's a matter of what slant you want to put on it, what mood you're in at that time. But I'd rather be positive because it feels better.
Okay.
That's good.
But I know there's a matrix out there that's trying to channel things, but I can turn it off. And I can make my own films. And it is an ongoing challenge to deal with that.
Well, it's awfully reinforced in many other media.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. So what can we do? Jefferson talked about the key to a democracy is an informed citizenry. So that's what we're trying
And
to
who
get
pays for newspapers, television ads, radio
All
ads?
right, turn it off.
Okay, Kai.
You read
Yes.
the paper, you want to read it.
We had a
Try to talk up because the mic's here. Try.
we had a course at the school for 2 sessions on film noir, 40s and 50s.
Mm.
And it turns out, very, very interesting, so very nice to research. It turned out that the films that are most with us, that talk the most to us today, are the most documentary films.
Really?
47 scenes of New York street life, not studio. And that's something that's with us. All the stuff that's been in the studio, all the stuff they've lied about. It's like, you can't watch it anymore. You see the back projection, and it's ridiculous. Everybody laughs about it because you see somebody's getting shot and there's no blood. So what's most realistic, for some reason, in a sense, is most eternal. So
Kai, why don't you identify the school? That's the Henry George.
Henry George School of Social Science, 30th Street, New York City.
A very major impetus. Henry George is coming back into great favor now.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so.
And it's a good school here in New York.
Different
yeah.
interpretation.
He's the
of
director
capitalism.
of that. Yeah.
Very much so.
So
Okay.
he's involved with hermeneutics in his own way.
Yes.
So So who are some other characters in hermeneutics that one can learn from? I recently revisited some of my bookshelf, and I realized that Carlos Castaneda from the 1960s had a lot to say about hermeneutics. When he talked about that we live in a description of the world. We don't really know the world. We have this description pounded into us that this is a table, this is a chair, this is a floor. We're told that. And it's all based on a noun type universe where the Indians would say, this is chairing. It's a verb. This is tabling. This is flooring. So it's more of a verb-based way of knowing. We're very much in subject and object way of knowing because of our language. And that's the hypothesis of, I think it was Benjamin Lee Whorf, he talks about. Our language defines the perimeters of our ability to see the world.
What's his last name?
Whorf,
Great
W-H-O-R-F.
linguist.
Linguist, yeah. Alan Watts talks about it a
Well,
lot.
it's like the politics of perception,
Yes.
Reagan and McLuhan.
Okay, yeah, okay. That's still relevant, that material. And Castaneda talked about learning to see. That was his big thing, to become a impeccable warrior, a man of knowledge. It's learning to see, and learning to see beyond our descriptions of the world, and which is learning to see beyond our internal dialogue, which we have to learn to stop in order to see. That's what's going on all the time. You're talking to yourself. And that's how we get programmed. And of course, you can bring it back to a teacher that's out there now. I think his name is Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to get people to say, to live more in the now. And can I give this space to be right now, where we are, rather than going off somewhere else, which a lot of the media teaches us to do, or allows us to do, to go off somewhere else, rather than just see what is there now and have that be sufficient, so we don't have to consume more, buy more, just the idea of sufficiency. So that's spontaneous presentation here.
I first heard of Eckhart Tolle and Power Now because Paris Hilton was reading it before she went to jail.
Well, it's okay. It's popular stuff now, right? Whatever. But it doesn't negate the teachings. But Carlos Castaneda, of course, you have to have lived through the 60s and 70s.
That doesn't make it bad.
That's it, it's bad.
So related to that is this idea of a gloss, also related to hermeneutics. We live in a gloss, a total system of language and perception. Every field has that. The most famous field is the lawyer's field. They see things in ways that we don't. They have their whole perception and language that keeps that world alive. And the role of art, the role of independent filmmaking is to re-gloss, to change those glosses so we can see things different. Take something from physics and chemistry and add it to design. Take something from what Stuart Brand talked about, stacking polarities as a way of getting towards creativity, which is my next theme of going towards cosmogenesis. So you've got cybernetics with organic gardening. There's a polarity. You can put them together, you may come up with something new. Military intelligence with ecological intelligence. There's a polarity. You put them together, you may get something new. That is what we can do more than ever before now, because we have access to so much information. I'm not saying knowledge, I'm saying information. But to put it into knowledge, you have to structure it. Okay, and then maybe you get to wisdom, which is knowing how to use it.
Military intelligence is a contradiction of terms.
I know you're going to say that.
It's an oxymoron.
But we're getting better and better at it with our drones.
What are you reading my mind?
Yeah, reading. So now I'm going to move to the third theme before this computer changes on. It's just the screen saver. So the third theme is this big word, which is a combination of two Greek words, cosmogenesis. Anybody know that word?
Cosmo meaning world, Genesis
Origin.
meaning
Creation of the world, yes. And there's a great cultural historian, Thomas Barry, who talks about this. Yes, who's talked about the great work. And he's saying that the great work that we're up to right now is moving into this ecozoic age. From the Mesozoic to the ecozoic. Rather than man over nature, man with nature. Pretty simple idea. The cosmogenesis, in my interpretation, is this idea that the universe is based on continuous creation. Okay, we are in a state of continuous creation, and
Are you ready to run the
I'm
film
going to
now?
run the film. You're getting tired of hearing me talk here.
Okay.
All right.
You're good though, you're good.
All right, you're learning
He
something?
is good, yeah.
Come on.
Sir, could
so-
you sit back a little? Well, go ahead.
Okay, we're
Could
gonna
you
go
sit
to the
back a
film.
little bit that way?
There's my universe. You can figure me out there if you study
Sounds
every
like
one of
a-
those files. Oops, you missed it. Okay, so I'm going to go to the beginning of eco-design, but I wanted to say more about cosmogenesis before we go into that. So the universe is in the state of continuous creation. So therefore, if we're going to be aligned with the universe, we need to be in a state of continuous creation. And therefore, we have to learn how to create what matters to us. That is the power that humans have. That is the real gift. And in fact, if you read Matthew Fox with his stuff on creation spirituality, he's reframing even what we think of as original sin, which he says the original sin is refusing to create. And redemption is liberation of the creative urge. So that's another way of thinking about it.
Was the computer booting?
No, it's just ready for me to hit it.
Oh.
We'll go into the beginning of eco-design.
That's a good one.
Could you say that again, what you just said?
Okay, yeah, so it's a reframing from a creation spirituality point of view. Matthew Fox, who heads a school out in Oakland, California, I think under that name. So he's trying, because most of our Christian tradition, the Bible, doesn't talk about creativity very much, does it? In fact, it's not even encouraged very much. So the idea is original sin is the refusal to create yourself. I would probably add to that, because that's our ultimate creation. And redemption is liberation of the creative powers within us, which actually is a deeper understanding of what Joshua ben Joseph actually said, who we think is Jesus, but that's the Greek name. His real name is Joshua ben Joseph. And in the Gospel of Thomas, he talks about that if you bring out what is within you, what is within you will save you. And if you don't bring out what is within you, what is within you will slay you. So therefore, you don't really have much choice but to be engaged with your creative potential. And I would say a lot of us have forgotten that, or it's not taught enough. And that's where the real pleasure is in life, and that's the real gift. And it can be little things that we create, just like a good meal.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a new theory of the universe. But
Who-
it's an
who made that
orientation.
actual statement?
That's in the Gospel of Thomas, which was banned from the Bible. So
In the King James Version, right?
I think so. I'm not enough. You got to read.
I keep telling people there's
Not in King
more
James
to life
Version,
than the
it's
King
apocrypha,
James
the false
Version.
Bible.
You got to read Elaine Pagels on that. She talks about the Gospel of Thomas versus the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John is what's won out, which emphasized original sin, which emphasized only one Son of God,
Right.
and emphasized, what's the third part of that equation? Redemption. That's the biggest thing, how they get people stuck in their cycle. Redemption. You have to be redeemed through the church. And if you're not redeemed through the church, you don't exist. So
George
I'm saying,
Harrison, within you, without you.
yeah, very good.
Thomas says you do it from the inside. Thomas is my favorite gospel, actually.
Thomas?
The Thomas gospel is my favorite gospel.
Yes, right. Right. And Thomas was the doubting Thomas, and it was banned from the Bible. And that's another conversation. You want to get to Da Vinci Code and how the Catholic Church manipulated and betrayed the teachings of Joshua ben Joseph 2,000 years ago. That's part of the reason we have these institutions that don't serve the creative process.
Do you know, in around the late 1800s, there was a Catholic code that was very close to getting people to understand that capital ownership by the masses was important. So,
Wow.
What was his name?
Norman Curlin called that to my attention. And
Sixtus the Fifth?
he started to make some headway even in Islam within
Okay.
the last 10 or 20 years. So I think it's important to be open-minded that all institutions have a range of more sacrificing and less sacrificing people for the benefit of others. Because a lot of people, when they're on vacation or when things are going well and their markets, their accounts are up,
Yeah.
they don't really help other people. They start off saying they would, They think they are, but they're really not.
Right.
And likewise, if you hear the popes are bad or whatever, it may be worth it to look into it.
I'm not saying the popes are bad, I'm saying the philosophy that they
Or the church is
promulgated was incomplete.
The whole idea of binary economics and capital ownership in corporations is that the same corporate financing should be available to individuals. So
Yes.
it's good to understand what that, for example, what those powers are. To
Yes.
just sort of sweep them aside.
No, I didn't sweep aside. I'm not talking about that as much.
Or
I'm
to say
talking.
a church is unnecessary.
I didn't say that either.
Are we getting off track?
I didn't say.
Yeah, are we getting off track?
I'm
We're
talking
supposed to see the
about
film.
creation spirituality as an orientation. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong here. I'm saying the creative process is how the universe works, and that when we align ourselves with it, our life may work more as well. That's my premise.
The changing
And
universe.
learning to create what matters to us. And in fact, I'm going to bring 4 clips, and one of the clips
Okay, good. We're
is
gonna get
from
the clips.
one of my teachers, Robert Fritz, who actually has a class related to that basic notion. But everybody wants to see the film. So
Yeah,
it's
well, let's see the
feel
film.
you here. We all want to go into a film world.
I just got to give you a quickie. I think somewhere in the Bible it does say that Christ said that we would be able to do greater things than he was able to accomplish on this earth. A lot of people have never heard that message.
All right, that's a good one. Christ consciousness, Christ within. I like that.
Okay, are we going to, here comes Joe Friendly.
Okay, so
Okay,
we're
here
going
comes
to
everybody, here comes
We're
everybody.
going to move into
Okay.
the film side, which everybody wants to see. Has anybody seen this film before?
I have not. No, let's see it.
We'll know until we
We'll know what we see.
Okay.
Okay, well,
So I'm only going to
hit
show.
it, hit the button.
I'm only going to show a little bit, but it does frame the question.
How long would
And
this
you'll see
be?
this
Set
will
them up,
be-
how long would they be? The
Well,
clips?
each clip is about 4 or 5 minutes long.
4 or 5 minute clips, okay.
Okay, so
Roll tape. Okay.
Alan, why don't you hit that light?
Roll tape.
that's it for everything.
Showtime!
Okay. We'll get the sound going here.
This is ecological design.
For thousands of years, humans have adapted to their environments through the process of design. Weaving local materials to meet their needs and intertwining nature's patterns with their lives. Indigenous communities live within the limits of their local ecosystem. Nature, technology, and culture maintain a dynamic balance. The designs of the industrialized world have developed beyond the limits of local ecosystems. Today, our global technologies are depleting the Earth's resources, darkening the skies and waters with waste, and endangering much of life's diversity. Can we invent a more comprehensive way of designing, which will integrate the built world with our larger ecosystem, the biosphere? Can we find a way of life which will create a harmony between nature, technology, and humanity? During the Industrial Age, engines and fossil fuels exploded the limits of local ecosystems. Distant resources were brought together in the process of mass production. Industry, on an unimagined scale, transformed the landscape, while the goods which poured from the production lines transformed our values. The machine, precise, standardized, specialized, and inexhaustible, seemed to promise a future of unlimited growth. the environmental consequences of design seemed remote.
The century began with architects being inspired by an emerging age of industry and technology. And everybody wanted the building to somehow function like a combustion engine. And as an inspirational force in 1910, one can understand it. But as a continuing inspiration in our post-industrial world, or our new world of information and ecology, it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Well, Thomas, all architecture since the Industrial Revolution has been designed without reference to nature. As an environment, either natural or social, was not consequential. Of course, it was absolutely categorically rejected in the international style, where the assumption was that there was a genetic architectural solution which is appropriate to all people, all places, at all times, which, of course, has been demonstrated to be inappropriate for all places, all people, at all times.
The modernists saw the building as an isolated object. It was isolated from its environment, and it was isolated from its urban context. It was an object in space, and independent of history. All those connections were severed. So the great paradigms that drove the way we think about the built environment were formulated at the turn of the century, and largely in the 30s. Le Corbusier in Europe drew Villa Radieuse, which was the towers in the park strategy of urbanism. And Frank Lloyd Wright drew his picture of broad-acre cities, which is really the paradigm for the suburb. And they became the kind of visual paradigm that became codified.
Architects like Le Corbusier and Frank Lloyd Wright, in their time, anticipated tomorrow. They anticipated the direction of the future. And the problem, of course, in all art forms is that the pioneers often seal the show. In other words, they do all the things that are most interesting in the beginning. And so the residuals that are left over are usually not worth exploring, or at least they're minor explorations at best. And how do you go on to the next step? And what is the next step? If machines influence the first half of the century, then clearly a concern for the earth is certainly the iconography or the images of the future. How do we recognize the earth? How do we go back and look at it as a fresh source of imagery? Who amongst designers today will bring about this ecological revolution?
Well, the advantage that a design outlaw has is of just going dead at something instead of having to cycle all of the thoughts and ideas and potential usages, some through institution or other. This is a person who's just figuring out what would be nifty to do next with what's available in the way of tools.
The responsibility of the designer is the outlaw, and the outlaw thinker is certainly to try to reach forward beyond the restrictions of today, beyond the stupidities of the current political situation, whatever that may be, the current way things are done, and say, God, how should we really be doing this?
The world will often think of them as being completely mad, and the world may be right, but we need them like hell, because they are the ones who give us the fresh insights and the fresh ideas and fresh ways of looking at things.
I've been able to live now for almost a half century on the frontier without anybody guaranteeing me anything or telling me what to do. I've learned how to survive there, and one of the things I do is never to try to persuade anybody to. You don't try to sell anything. You see what needs to be done and you do it.
Everyone I know, from Bucky on down, has this extreme, who've become quote-unquote outlaws, has an extreme sense of urgency. That the system that we have created is the potential to undo everything that we would like to see happen.
Buckminster.
Okay, that's the introduction.
That's great.
7-minute, 47-second introduction, and you see we frame the question, 2 basic questions that led to many other different questions. Movie's about 64 minutes altogether.
What was the question, Frank?
Well, at the beginning, I don't know if you saw that, how can we invent a way of life that integrates nature, technology, and humanity? How can we invent a way of designing that integrates nature, technology, and humanity? And so that's what it led our research. That's what it evolved to. We put together, it was about 20 hours of material. It came down to 64 minutes. So that's another thing that the independent filmmaker does is synthesize and distill. Yes.
Where did the idea for the research come from? I mean, were you pursuing something in yourself, or had this come from someplace else?
Good question. I met my partner. I didn't create this film myself. Nobody does. My co-creator, Brian Dance, I met him in an elevator at NYU Film School. And I was carrying a critical path by Buckminster Fuller, and that's where the conversation began. So I think Buckminster Fuller, who you saw very briefly there, was the tour guide for this film, and we were just curious because he had died in 1983, and we started making this film in 1990.
Okay, this is another film.
It was a long process.
Turn
So I would say it was Fuller, please, and his oeuvre, to use a French word.
Well, what's changed in 13 years since you've made this movie? What's changed?
Oh, you're asking good questions tonight. What's your name?
That's Alan
You
Steinfeld.
just showed up. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's changed.
No, tell me what happened, because it's obviously different now.
Well, I would say that ecological design and green architecture and the green movement is going mainstream right now.
Right.
A lot of people are seeing that we don't have much choice, given what's happened in the Middle East. There was a little war over there, as you recall, and the price of oil was very high. So I think the masses now, if we're going to talk about the masses, are more informed and more interested, and there are more and more designers and people informed on how to do this. So hopefully it will become more ubiquitous.
So our outlaws have become our in-laws.
Yes, that's it. That's the cycle that we get into this film. You stole my line there.
Is that your line? I just came to
Yeah,
Very good.
Well, that's part of our City21 evolved out is the outlaws become the in-laws. It's a cycle.
Okay.
And then you become the in-laws, you get bored with that, you become the outlaws again. So it's a continuous cycle, and we need both.
All right, so...
And they need to be in conversation with each other.
Yeah.
It's what one Jerome Bruner called third horizon thinking, which is the visionary thinking. And then you have first horizon thinking, which is, well, what do I do next? I just got to get through the day. And so usually these people don't talk to each other very much. But we need second horizon thinking, facilitators, which probably everybody in this room to some extent, who can negotiate between the horizons and allow this stuff to happen. So Howard is playing that role with what he does. Yes? Second horizon.
I have a quick question. You use the term paradigm a few times in the film.
Yeah.
Maybe can you give us a definition, your definition of paradigm?
Well, it's another word that's been batted around
It's
a lot.
about a 40-year-old word.
Yeah, but it comes from the Greeks, para and dime.
Yes.
So it's a pattern of perception. Okay? It's a
pattern,
way of seeing
pattern.
the world, a model of the world, and we can talk about the dominant paradigm.
Thank you.
In America, the dominant paradigm is get a job and then retire and don't think for yourself very much.
Yeah,
Okay, buy this and you'll be happy. So that's the dominant paradigm, and there's an emerging paradigm, which we would say ecological design is an emerging paradigm.
But when you're in a paradigm, you don't know you're in a paradigm. That's the problem. You think
Right.
that's how things are.
Right, a lot of times it's unconscious, it's submerged, but now we can become more aware of our paradigms, and we can get into a meta-paradigm.
It's sort of like systems thinking.
Meta-paradigm is you can play with paradigms. Today I'll be into psychedelic art, tomorrow I'll be into ecological design, so you can play with them.
What's fascinating about the word, there can be a breaking down of the paradigm as well, because it's a new system, because it's a structure.
Right.
And you have the structures being built, and the paradigm can be called inflexible until you break it down.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
in architecture, what we were talking about is the modernist paradigm dominated. Look around this part of town, it's modernist.
Thank
I don't see anything ecological except for in this building here, this room.
Thank you.
So can win out, but you have to break it down. That's the idea.
Yes.
It was Kuhn who popularized
Right, the
it
structure
30
of scientific revolution. So in science, there's a dominant paradigm that Einstein broke down with quantum mechanics, for instance. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something apropos of that. Oh, did you want to? Oh, sorry.
When you talk about the Greeks,
Yeah.
and you talk about democracy, they have the biggest slave state ever.
Oh, Maggie, we don't want to go into
Yeah,
that.
we're not going to do that.
For 50 years, they didn't have that.
There's popcorn for those who want it.
We have technology now.
Well, I wanted to mention that you had in the beginning of the 20th, well, from the 20s on, you had people like, you had the Bauhaus, you had Corbusier, you had Frank Lloyd Wright, and Albrecht Speer, whose son is now designing for Red China. And
are they still red?
These, I don't know.
That's a joke.
They're a rainbow of fascism. I don't know, but they this style, the hard edge style, the corporate hard edge style.
Yes.
And the international modernist style.
Yes.
It's on its way out.
Yeah, but it's kind of wrecked the world. And the thing is,
that.
feng shui has come in very big now,
right,
as a necessity for architects to study feng shui.
Right.
It's in.
Among other things, but yes.
And then because also, and then the other thing is the divergence where you see people like Antonio Gaudi.
Exactly.
Oh.
I want to give a shout out to
Barcelona.
my city, Barcelona.
Oh, yeah.
Where all the buildings do have balconies and strange statues and.
Well, Gaudi was a paradigm
Great
creator.
town.
Curved
Great
and
town.
asymmetrical.
Right.
curves.
Those guys don't come along very often. It's like Frank Lloyd Wright. He was a cultural hero.
Well, they got eclipsed. They got eclipsed by a kind of a fascist mentality in the architectural world. They were all
In
living out.
Barcelona, trees line the streets and they have balconies everywhere. You have buildings with trees popping out of them and stuff.
Well, we could say that just to go off on that before I show more film, but everybody wants to see that.
Yeah.
Architecture does reflect an ideology. So someone has to pay for it.
Yes.
So that's the challenge of ecological design, is getting people to pay for it to happen. And that's what Obama's doing. He's making that money available now. So there's a new ideology that is about to reign. And that's good. But the international style was a reflection of the organization now. That's why it happened. And it wasn't all bad. There's always something good in anything if you look hard
The
enough.
way it evolved to just all sharp edges.
Yeah, because it was
very-
easier to do.
Is,
Very economical. Instead of paying for facades and beauty, they just do the cheapest and fastest way to
sharp
build a
edges,
building.
the sharp edges are destructive. They create destructive energy.
Yeah, expediency over principle is another way to put it. Expediency, just build it quick.
That's
Rather
what we
than
have to-
principle, which is more organic
Form follows
architecture.
function.
Well, that's one principle. There's many principles.
Yeah.
But if you read Frank Lloyd Wright, he'll talk about organic principles of architecture. And that takes longer to do. Anything of quality takes a long time, if you haven't noticed. But we live in a very instant gratification culture, so it's more difficult. But we are capable of it. Okay, that's where I find my hope. You study history, we are capable of it. And don't, it's the becoming a lord of the quotidian is no way to live.
What does that mean? Say that again?
Lord of the quotidian, which is being caught up in the everyday. Okay? There's a lot of those people around who are going to be lords of the quotidian, tell you what's real every day. But if you live that life, it's only on the surface. Maybe we'll get into the long now perspective with Stuart Brand, who's over here, to talk about.
You're going to show Brand now?
No, I'm going to go to the introduction.
Long now.
Well, I want to change tape.
Okay.
So
Howard wants to change
say a
tape.
few things.
I can set
You
up
got a
the,
couple of minutes. Can you
film here.
Say something unimportant, he's changing tape.
Yeah, we're going to change tape now.
Right.
So we're going to
All right.
stop
Well,
for a
this is the new
second.
design for
How do you
City21.
stop this?
9 different chapters.